Welcome to today's episode of the Deep Dive Credit Podcast, presented by Elite Credit Solutions. We are your trusted partner in affordable credit repair, proudly based in Tampa, Florida, and dedicated to serving clients across the entire United States. Join us as we explore the intricacies of credit management, share expert insights, and empower you with the knowledge you need to achieve your financial goals. Get ready for an enlightening journey into the world of credit. Let's dive in.
Welcome to the Deep Dive. Ready to plunge into a world that's, well, a little bit dark. Today, it's the dark web.
Yeah, the dark web.
Yeah.
It's got this almost mythical reputation, right? Like some digital boogeyman hiding under the bed.
Exactly. It's like everyone's heard the rumors, the scary stories, but no one really knows what to believe. We're going to try and separate fact from fiction today. We've got a ton of research articles, news reports, even some first-hand accounts.
We're going to unpack it all. How it works, what really goes on there, and what it all means for you.
So first things first. When we say dark web, is it really just the internet's bad neighborhood?
Not exactly. Think of it like an iceberg. Okay.
I'm following.
The part we see every day, the websites, the Google searches, that's just the tip, the surface web.
No.
And it's like a tiny fraction of the whole thing.
So there's a whole lot more going on beneath the surface.
Oh, yeah, way more. Most of the internet is hidden. That's where things get interesting. That's the deep web.
Deep web. Okay, so what's down there?
A whole bunch of stuff. Email inboxes, online banking, private databases, you name it. Anything not indexed by search engines.
So the deep web isn't automatically bad, it's just hidden.
Exactly. It's just stuff that needs, specific passwords or special software to get to. Like a VIP room online.
Ah, okay. And the dark web, where does that fit in?
That's tucked away even deeper.
Yeah.
It's a part of the deep web, but even more hidden. You need special software to get there.
Like what?
Like the Tor browser. Tor stands for the onion router.
I've heard of Tor, but how does it actually work? Does it make you, invisible online?
Not invisible, but it disguises your identity pretty well. Imagine sending a letter, but wrapping it in multiple envelopes. Each envelope has a different address.
So it's like a chain of anonymous forwarding.
Yeah. Your internet traffic bounces through all these encrypted servers all over the world. It's really hard to trace back to you.
Clever. But that kind of anonymity, it could be used for good or bad, right?
Right. It's a double-edged sword. That's what makes the dark web so complex.
So give us an example. What kind of stuff happens on the dark web?
Well, on the one hand, you have journalists protecting their sources, activists organizing protests,
Wow.
whistleblowers exposing corruption.
So it can be a tool for, freedom of speech.
Absolutely.
Huh.
But then there's the flip side. You've got the illegal stuff, drugs, weapons, stolen data, you name it.
This is where those stories about hitmen and black markets come from.
Yeah, those things do exist.
Yeah.
The same anonymity that protects activists can also protect criminals. It's a tough problem.
Okay, so it's not all bad, but it's not all good either. But how does this affect, the average person? Me. I'm not buying illegal weapons or anything.
That's a great question, and it gets to the heart of why we're doing this deep dive. It's about the potential impact on you, on your personal security. You see, even if you never go on the dark web, your information could still end up there.
Wait, what? How?
Data breaches. They're happening all the time. Hackers target businesses, organizations, even governments. And where do they often sell that stolen data?
The dark web.
Exactly. Credit card numbers, social security numbers, passwords, medical records. It's all for sale there.
So even if I'm careful online, my information could still be out there.
Unfortunately, yeah.
Yeah.
It's the reality of the digital world we live in. But don't worry, it's not all doom and gloom.
Okay, good. Because I was starting to get a little freaked out. So what can we do to protect ourselves?
We'll get into that in more detail later. But the good news is there are steps you can take. You're not powerless.
All right, that's good to hear. But first, I think we need to unpack this dark web thing a bit more. How do you even get there?
Well, you can't just Google it.
Right, because it's hidden.
Exactly.
Yep.
Dark websites use these special addresses. They end in odd on onion. You need the Tor browser to access them.
So it's like a secret code you need to get in.
Kinda. And once you're in, you got to be really, really careful.
What do you mean?
Like, don't download anything unless you're absolutely sure it's safe. And clicking random links, definitely not a good idea.
So every link could be a trap.
Basically, if you have to download something, make sure you've got good antivirus software running.
Got it. Any other safety tips?
Two big ones. First, never use your regular computer or browser to go on the dark web. Use a virtual machine.
A virtual machine. What's that?
It's like a computer within your computer. It keeps your dark web activity separate from everything else.
So it's like a safety bubble.
Exactly. And the second tip, always use a VPN with Tor.
I've heard of VPNs, but how do they help on the dark web?
VPNs encrypt all your internet traffic, so it's even harder to track you. It's like wearing a disguise on top of your disguise.
So it's like double protection.
Exactly. Because even Tor isn't perfect. A VPN adds an extra layer of security.
Okay, got it. Virtual machines and VPNs, essential tools for the dark web explorer.
You got it. Like armor in a dangerous world.
Mm.
But even then, the dark web is unpredictable. It's constantly changing. There are always new risks popping up.
That reminds me of something I read. It basically said that protecting the good guys, the dissidents, and whistleblowers shouldn't mean making things easier for the bad guy.
Yeah, that's the dilemma, isn't it? Stopping the criminals without shutting down the legitimate uses. It's a tough balance.
And it sounds like people are trying to find that balance. I read that Interpol and the European Union are working together to, take down illegal marketplaces on the dark web.
They are. And they've had some successes shutting down some major drug markets.
That's good to hear. But it also sounds like a constant battle, like it's never really over.
It is. Like a game of cat and mouse. Technology's always evolving, so the tactics have to evolve too. It's a never-ending race.
It's a wild world down there. But let's bring it back to, reality for a sec. You mentioned how this affects everyday people, even those of us who, never even think about going on the dark web. How does it actually impact us?
That's where it gets personal. It's not just about criminals in dark corners. It's about you, your data, your identity.
Okay, now you've got my attention.
Think of it like this. You don't have to go to the zoo to get hurt if a lion escapes, right?
Right, makes sense.
Same idea here. You might not go on the dark web, but your information can still end up there because of those data breaches we talked about.
So it's like a ripple effect. Something happens over there, but we feel the impact over here.
Exactly. And that impact can be serious. Imagine your credit card details sold online, fraudulent charges, or even worse, identity theft. Someone takes out loans in your name. It's not just a what if, it happens.
All right, that's officially scary. But knowledge is power, right?
Absolutely. And the good news is, we're not helpless. There are things you can do to protect yourself, even if you never go near the dark web.
Okay, phew. Tell me more about that. What can people do to stay safe?
Well, one of the best things is to sign up for a dark web monitoring service. They're like your personal digital detective.
A digital detective? That sounds kind of cool.
Right. They're constantly searching the dark web for your info.
Like looking for our digital fingerprints?
Yeah, exactly. And if they find anything, they'll alert you right away, so you can take action before anything bad happens.
Okay, so say they do find something. What kind of action are we talking about?
It depends. Changing your passwords, freezing your credit, contacting your bank, or maybe even reporting identity theft. The faster you act, the better.
Makes sense. But those monitoring services, they aren't free, are they?
Many have free trials or, basic plans. Honestly, it's worth the cost. It's like insurance for your digital life.
Okay, good point. So that's one strategy. Anything else we can do to stay safe?
Cybersecurity basics. It might seem boring, but it makes a huge difference.
Like what?
Strong passwords for every single account. And I mean unique, not just the same one with a different number at the end.
No more password 123.
Nope. That's like leaving your front door wide open. And whenever you can, use two-factor authentication.
Oh, that thing where they send a code to your phone?
Yeah, that's it. I know it's an extra step, but trust me, it's worth it. Like a double lock on your door. Oh, and be super careful about phishing emails.
Phishing emails, those are the ones that try to trick you, right?
Exactly. Don't click any links that look suspicious. And never open attachments from people you don't know.
Okay, got it. Be suspicious of everything.
Pretty much. And keep your software updated. Those updates often have security fixes.
So like patching up holes in your digital defenses.
Exactly. Do those things, and you'll be way safer online.
It sounds like we need to be a lot more proactive about our digital safety, huh?
We do. But let's be real. Data breaches happen. So what can you do if your information does end up on the dark web?
Yeah, that's a good question. What then?
Check your bank and credit card statements regularly. Look for anything strange. Report it right away if you see something.
So stay vigilant and act fast.
Exactly. You can also consider freezing your credit. It makes it much harder for someone to open accounts in your name.
Freezing my credit. I've heard of that. Is it a hassle?
It can be a little inconvenient, yeah. But if you're worried about identity theft, it's worth it for the peace of mind.
Okay, that makes sense. So even if we try to avoid the dark web, it can still come to us.
That's the truth. But it's not about living in fear. It's about being aware and taking steps to protect yourself. The more you know about the dark web, the better.
Okay, that's reassuring. But before we go any further, I want to circle back to something. We've talked a lot about the dangers, but you said the dark web isn't all bad. There are legitimate uses for it, right?
Oh, absolutely. And that's what makes it so interesting. It's not all black and white. It has a good side, too. Like, it plays a big role in protecting free speech. And it helps whistleblowers expose things that are wrong.
Can you give us some examples?
Sure. Think about journalists in countries with strict censorship. The dark web lets them talk to their sources safely.
So it helps them protect their sources and share information without getting in trouble.
Exactly. And whistleblowers can use it, too, to share evidence anonymously, so they don't get punished for speaking out.
That's pretty powerful. Any other examples?
People living under oppressive governments can use it to communicate with the outside world, to get around censorship.
So it's like a way to connect people and give them a voice.
Exactly. It can give them access to information and resources they wouldn't have otherwise.
That's really interesting. It's not just a place for criminals, like some people think.
It's more complicated than that. It's a tool. And like any tool, it can be used for good or bad. It depends who's using it.
That makes sense. But it also raises a question. How do we deal with that as a society? How do we encourage the good uses and stop the bad ones?
That's a tough question. It's about finding a balance, protecting free speech and privacy, but also keeping people safe and upholding the law.
Yeah, it's like that quote we talked about earlier, protecting the good guys without helping the bad guys.
It's a delicate balance, for sure.
Yeah.
And it's going to take all of us working together to figure it out. Governments, law enforcement, tech companies, and regular people like us.
It sounds like there are no easy answers here.
There aren't. It's a conversation we need to keep having.
Well, this has been incredibly eye-opening. I'm starting to see the dark web in a whole new light.
It's like exploring any new place. The more you learn, the more you realize how much more there is to discover.
Okay, before we wrap up, let's give our listeners some key takeaways. What are the most important things to remember?
Number one, you don't have to be on the dark web to be affected by it. Data breaches and cybercrime are real, and they can happen to anyone.
So we all need to be thinking about online safety, even if we never go on the dark web.
Exactly. And the good news is you can do a lot to protect yourself. Strong passwords, two-factor authentication, watch out for phishing scams, and all that good stuff.
Those are great practical tips. Anything else?
Be informed. The more you understand about the dark web, the safer you'll be online. Keep learning, keep asking questions.
Great advice. But before we sign off, I want to go back to something we touched on earlier, the ethics of the dark web. How do we balance privacy and security? How do we make sure efforts to police the dark web don't end up hurting the people who are using it for good?
That's the million-dollar question. There's no easy answer. It's a discussion we need to have as a society. We need to figure out how to protect free speech and privacy while also staying safe and making sure the law is upheld.
So it's not just a technical problem, it's a philosophical one too.
It is. It's about deciding what's important to us and finding solutions that work for everyone.
It's complicated, that's for sure. But one thing's for sure, the dark web isn't going anywhere.
It's not. And it's going to keep changing in ways we can't even predict. So we have to be ready to adapt, to learn, and to keep talking about these issues.
Well said. This has been a fascinating conversation. Thank you so much for sharing your insights.
It's been a pleasure. Always happy to talk about this stuff.
It really is, it's a whole other world down there. But I think we've given our listeners plenty to think about. We've gone from the tip of that iceberg all the way down to the bottom, explored those hidden corners, and even found, some surprising bright spots. Any final thoughts before we come back up to the surface?
I think the dark web is, in a way, it's like a miniature version of the whole internet. You see the best and worst of humanity there, the ingenuity, the good intentions, but also, the darker side. It shows us that technology is powerful, and it's up to us to use it wisely, to use it for good.
It's a good reminder that we're all connected, too, in ways we might not always see. Our digital lives, they're all linked together. What one person does online can have a real impact on others.
Yeah, definitely. It highlights how important personal responsibility is online. Our actions, our choices, they matter. They have consequences.
Well, I think we've covered a lot today. The technical stuff, the risks, the unexpected benefits, and even, the ethical questions. I've got to say, I started with a lot of assumptions about the dark web, but now I see it differently, much more nuanced.
It's kind of like visiting a new place, The more you explore, the more you learn. And then you realize there's even more to discover.
This deep dive has been a real learning experience. But before we wrap things up, I want to leave our listeners with something to think about. We've talked about balancing privacy and security, but what does that actually look like? What are the compromises, and how do we all, as individuals and as a society, navigate these complex issues?
That's a big question. There isn't one right answer, and it's something that'll keep challenging us, especially as technology keeps advancing. Those lines between our online lives and our real lives, they're getting blurrier all the time. It's going to take a lot of careful thought, open discussion, and being willing to change as we learn more.
It sounds like the dark web is full of questions that don't have easy answers.
It is, but that's good. I think it keeps us curious, keeps us engaged, and it makes us really think about our place in this digital world. It's constantly changing. Big thanks to you for being here today, sharing your expertise. It's been great.
The pleasure's all mine. Always happy to, shed some light on this topic. It's often misunderstood. And to our listeners, we hope you found this deep dive informative and maybe even a little bit challenging. Remember, knowledge is power. The more you understand about the dark web, the better equipped you'll be to stay safe online and make responsible choices. Stay curious, stay informed, and most importantly, stay safe out there. We'll see you next time on The Deep Dive.
That wraps up another insightful episode of the Deep Dive Credit Podcast, brought to you by Elite Credit Solutions, your go-to resource for affordable credit repair across the United States. We appreciate you joining us today, and we hope you found the information valuable and empowering. If you're ready to take control of your financial future, don't hesitate to reach out to us at 813-317-6776. Additionally, don't forget to like today's podcast, follow us, or subscribe to stay in tune with future updates. Thank you for listening, and until next time, keep striving for excellence in your credit journey.